7 months after the shooting death of Michael Brown, federal officials have cleared police officer Darren Wilson of any civil rights violations.
Michael Brown's death, though a tragedy, did not involve prosecutable conduct on the part of Officer Wilson.
The decision, outlined in an 86-page Justice Department report, states that Wilson acted in self-defense, giving legitimacy to Officer Wilson's account that 18-year-old Brown had reached into Wilson's car in an attempt to grab his gun. Investigators also agreed that forensic evidence supported Officer Wilson's testimony that after fleeing the confrontation, Brown turned around and refused to stop charging at him, discrediting witness accounts of a hands-up, don't-shoot scenario in which the teenager was peacefully surrendering. Hands up! Don't shoot! Hands up! Don't shoot! The searing report also uncovered extensive racism and a highly toxic environment within the Ferguson Police Department, citing a disturbing pattern of discriminatory and excessive force by police against black residents.
Our review of the evidence found no alternative explanation for the disproportionate impact on African American residents other than implicit and explicit racial bias.
The report says officers singled out and targeted blacks for various petty violations, and even more troubling, racist remarks and emails involving supervisors about the president and first lady, and disparaging comments about African Americans. And the mayor of Ferguson addressed the findings in this investigation late yesterday afternoon. But interestingly enough, Michaela, the police chief did not attend the press conference late yesterday. Michaela?
Very interesting. Conspicuous by his absence. All right, Ed, thanks so much. Let's discuss this further. Let's look ahead. Mo Ivory, an attorney and radio host, joins me. And Pastor Robert White with the Peace of Mind Church of Happiness. He's a member of the Clergy United, a group that helped protesters communicate with law enforcement during the protests in Ferguson. Good morning to the two of you. I know you've each had a chance to go over this report. Pastor, in fact, I know you were on the call that Attorney General Eric Holder had with some of the community leaders. I'm curious what your sense is of the report and what your fellow community leaders are saying this morning.
Well, good morning, Michaela, and thank you for having us. Primarily, as was stated in the Attorney General comments yesterday, is what this report has done is basically put ink and paper to what we've already known, those of us in this community. This police department, along with other municipal police and courts, have disproportionately attacked, basically, the African-American community in the St. Louis County area.
So validation from community members and community leaders there, not a surprise as the pastor mentions, Mo. So what now is the big question, right? Where does the city go? Where does the community go? Do you think it's a question of cleaning house, structural change? What do you think needs to happen?
Yeah, Michaela, good morning. I think it's all of those things. I mean, I think it starts at the top, and I feel that there's already been a certain amount of disrespect for the report by us not even hearing from the police chief Jackson. And for I would think that such a first step would have been for him, responsible for all these police officers, 50-plus police officers, responsible for what happened, you know, under his reign with the Michael Brown situation. I would think that he would be the first one to step up and say, you know what, it is now time for me to resign. I thought he would then next take steps to deal with the mayor, deal with some of the judges, some of the officials that have been blatantly a part of this racism that has come out in the report, but we haven't seen that. So I'm hopeful that, it's been out only for a day, so I'm hopeful that those are the next steps. There are recommendations, of course, from the Justice Department that they will have to, ultimately, hopefully sign a consent decree and begin to make those steps. But what about some of the damage to the residents that this has caused? I'd like to see some of the sentences that people, innocent people were sent to jail, lost their jobs, weren't able to feed their families. I'd like to see some damages, maybe some kind of civil class action lawsuit, something that begins to help people repair their lives, because I just, in all the damage that has been caused by this racism.
Pastor, Mo brings up a good point, and I think one of your frustrations has been the whole investigation by the DOJ was reactionary and not particularly preventative. In terms of that, what further would you like to see?
And we've seen this pattern throughout the country. When you look at all the investigations the Department of Justice have done, it's always been in reaction to Michaela, you talk about moving forward, but it's impossible for this community to move forward with the same folks in charge that allowed a city to burn. We have a governor who promised to protect the businesses and homes, but blatantly left an entire portion of this community unprotected. We have a mayor who said there's not a racial problem in Ferguson, and 102 pages in the 86-page report prove that there's a racial bias in this
Pastor, let me ask you more about that, Mayor, because I think that's very interesting. We had heard him say that he doesn't believe there's a racial divide in Ferguson. A month later, he clarified those comments. Yesterday, he spoke very differently after the report came out. Do you have confidence in this, Mayor, in your community?
No.
Well, what we have confidence in is that our government is positioned that the people must speak. If we want this mayor out, then we have to get to the polls and we have to make a change from the voting booth. We can't trust someone who comes in one day and then repeatedly, blatantly disavows himself from the situation. Yesterday at the press conference, he was late, and then he did not accept any questions from the media. They kept the protesters from being involved in the press conference. And so he's constantly showing by his actions and by his words that he's not interested in what's going on in this city. And so what these protesters are doing, what the protesters are doing is that we're calling for the police chief to step down, the mayor to step down, the city manager to step down, and for the people of Ferguson and the surrounding municipalities to be able to express themselves through their vote and through the proper representation.
We know within the police department, some employees are already under investigation, and some of them have been suspended. One has been fired already for those heinous, racist emails, some referring to the president as a chimpanzee. Other really horrific things were said in those emails. Mo, you expecting more heads to roll?
Yeah, but I mean, one head is not enough, you know, and nor is three. I agree totally what he said about voting, but there also has to be a breakdown of the systemic cooperation between different city offices that allow these things to go on. So it's not just the reaction of the mayor to say, like, oh, now I realize there's racism. He knew that this stuff was going on, but there was systemic cooperation between the police force, the courts, the prosecutors, everybody in that city cooperating to keep this system of racism going. That takes more than three heads rolling.
Nobody will disagree that this has to change, and some sort of dismantlement, some societal, some structural change has to happen. Pastor, we also know that that is not going to happen without a cost. We already know that Ferguson struggles with some finances already. All of this is going to have a cost. Is the community prepared for that?
Well, I think we've seen with some of our local municipalities that have made the change from just using ticketing to fund themselves.
Sure.
We have the city of Normandy that has a similar system like Ferguson has, and they have been able to make those changes. And so, yes, there's a cost. Yes, there's a taxation on the citizens. But I believe, as a taxpayer, I'm willing to pay an additional cost to have proper policing, proper court procedure, than to continue to allow the situation that has taken place. And another thing is that as much as the focus is on Ferguson, there's 91 or 81 other municipalities that need to take focus that, yes, this happens in Ferguson, but the rest of them have to begin to make systemic changes so that this won't be another incident.
And this is why so many eyes are on Ferguson to see how it is handled there. A lot of communities, a lot of cities are watching this. Mo Ivory, we appreciate it. Pastor, always a pleasure to have you with us. Thanks so much.